Hey guys, hope you're doing well. I'm just going to start the stream a little bit early today, so that's why I'm here sort of looking at the price rises and changes. Right now, obviously, we're looking at changes to Jimenez, Willock, Rudiger, Kulusevski. Kulusevski is an interesting one. I think he's been bordering on this price change for a while, and I think it's actually a little bit more influenced by wild cards, because I think Kulusevski is a fantastic pick for the wild card, but not necessarily as a single transfer for this week. I imagine most of those will be influenced by players like Jimenez, Willock, and Rudiger. I personally wanted to go Rudiger, but I think after looking at the press conferences from Tuchel, I will be going Reece James, so that's going to be my play. Whether I captain Reece James or not is probably a separate thing. I think it's already a bit of a gamble sidestepping Rudiger, so I think I'll be captaining Rafinha just because I know he'll more than likely be playing those two games under the new manager in Jesse Marsch. So that's going to be my plan really for the week. Similar to the team selection video, but that's sort of the situation there. Hope you guys are doing well though. How's everyone doing this evening? I'm going to start off quickly with some Twitter questions, just as people kind of flow into the YouTube chat and we get that going a little bit more. So Will has a question on Twitter. He says he can't catch the stream tonight, but he can watch back. In terms of these moves, David De Gea to Sa, that I think is a very, very good move in isolation. The one concern, of course, I'm looking at is Ait-Nouri and whether or not he plays. So we'll see whether he tackles that with transfers. Van Dijk to James, another interesting move. Given that he doesn't have a second City player, it makes a lot of sense. The tricky thing, of course, is going to be how to address the Liverpool situation in the subsequent week. Do we triple up on Liverpool again, especially since they missed out in game week 30? I feel like that's been a very tough choice for people who've made that sort of side transfer to the Chelsea double, but I think it might make sense, to be honest, to just flip flop between the two. Um, he says he'll bench Dennis, even if he was to roll and play 5-4-1. Interesting. So I mean, let's say if he doesn't take any transfers, would you still bench Dennis? I might actually prefer playing Dennis over Mahrez, just because I'm not sure whether or not Mahrez will actually play, and there could be an opportunity that he blanks again. But three sort of substitutions or three non-starts in a row, I think might be an exception. So I think Mahrez will probably play, hopefully. So I guess it's sensible. I still think this is a good week for Dennis. I personally would play Dennis. When I was looking at my team, I was thinking that Tierney would be the one who'd be dropped, and I would rather play Dennis. So those are kind of my thoughts there. As far as next week, him doing cash to Robbo, and yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about in terms of the flip flopping between defenders. I think that's a very lovely transfer. Downgrading Coutinho to Ramsey seems to be a lot of people's preference. I plan on actually doing that in game week 30, so I can show you guys my plans in a second. However, he does plan to free hit on 30. I would say that's an interesting choice. I'm not a big fan of free hitting on 30. I think that as long as you try and capture, let's say, a Leicester player, you pretty much have this game week covered because everyone already has elements of every other team. So a lot of people have Wolves defense at the least, and then have an Arsenal defender slash midfielder. And I think we'll probably go double Spurs heading towards that week. And I imagine everyone is going Rafinha this week as a priority transfer to the midfield, especially away from Bowen, who I can see is about to fall. And then when we're talking about someone like Coutinho slash Ramsey, just feel like that's a little bit of a hurtful sort of -4 to take. If you are downgrading Coutinho, I'd probably prefer someone from a different team if you feel like you don't have coverage. And seeing that you don't have an Arsenal player, I think it does make a bit more sense since you are going out of cash as well. I mean, it's a weird one, obviously, dropping both Aston Villa players. It's up to you, and I guess how you expect that game to go in 30. But I know you are planning on free hitting, so it's not a huge problem. I would just maybe reconsider. It is lovely that you have two free hits though, and using them on the blanks. I guess I can't fault it if you're going to wild card. The one thing I would say too is a later wild card does seem to make sense, especially after you free hit on 33. So that's the only kind of closing kind of cliff note that I have there. I'm just gonna quickly refresh the YouTube chat just to see if anyone's kind of come in and if anyone has any questions. Nice to see you, Catalina. Hi, Nuclear Atoms. It's almost 3 a.m., but you're going to be here a short time. Would you play Kane over Ramsey? To be honest, I probably would. Yeah, I probably would. I think we saw last week the power of a single game week. And honestly, I would play Kane over Ramsey. But I would also like to know who else is on your team. And maybe you telling me your wild card will let me help you out in terms of the decision making. So you've got Ramsey, Cancelo, Trent. So I guess you're playing Dubravka this week. Makes sense. You're going for Cody, James, Rudiger, Fraser, Salah. Okay, I understand. So you've got Fraser, and that's why you're kind of thinking about benching Ramsey, right? Okay. I think since you have Coutinho in your team, then I would definitely drop Ramsey. Yeah. Plan is to switch Coutinho out for Kulusevski in 29. A very sensible move. I would say though, if you're looking for if Coutinho on your wild card is your sort of single game week gamble, why not go for maybe a Chelsea player who could be a little bit more differential? Up to you though. Hi mate, for my wild card, Kane, Thiago Silva, Ramsey, Son, Martinelli, or Jimenez. Oh, sorry, two options. Okay, so Kane, Thiago Silva, Ramsey, Son, Martinelli, or Jimenez, James Coutinho, Son, Saka. I prefer the second option, my friend. Just because I prefer having Coutinho, Son, and Saka. I just think there's a bit more permanence within that team in terms of Saka. I think I have a little bit more security with his minutes. The same thing with James, I would say. Thiago Silva and James are probably on similar levels because it seems like James has actually recovered very well. So from Tuchel's point of view, I think James will start to become a nailed asset soon. So I would prefer James if I was wildcarding. Hey Texio, I'm doing good. How are you? Utkarsh, how are you doing? Nice to see you around. Kane or Jimenez? Definitely Kane. Are we talking about just in terms of your bench order, Utkarsh? And then left hand to Jaw says, hi Fran, I did -8 Ramsdale, Laporte, and King out for Salah, James, and Broya. Look, I think that's worth it. Whether or not Ramsdale to Salah is actually worth it, I think it also depends on whether you have two Wolves defenders, because I'm not a huge fan of doubling up on the Wolves defense. It might be the play this week, but I kind of learned my lesson in Game 26, doubling up on a sort of not top four defense. Doesn't Chelsea midfield have a minutes risk? Absolutely, it does have a minutes risk, but I think that's the whole point of a sort of single game week wild card, if that makes sense. And yes, you're right, Ziyech just came back into training. I just think that Coutinho, I'm not sure if he has a great ceiling if you're kind of covered by Ramsey. And if you don't want to play Ramsey, I guess the question would be, why have Ramsey at all other than... It seems like almost you're drafting Ramsey exclusively so that he plays in 30. That's an interesting choice. I also think that for all the people wildcarding too, I think as long as you have options to go back into Cancelo, you're all set. I think he does have an expensive defense, Michael. I agree with that, but at the same time, it seems like he's probably going to pivot towards a structure where he is prioritizing playing big at the back, sort of like earlier in the season, and I think it could work out really well because we've missed out on Chelsea for a long time now, but if we think about it, Chelsea have done tremendously well in terms of just their defense when it comes to the Premier League games when they actually play their sort of full strength defense. How important Wolves defense are for the next couple of weeks? I think one defender is enough to cover Wolves personally. I'm not going to go any more than that. I'm not even too fond really of going for double or triple Wolves. I think that's a little bit excessive. But I know early in the season some people really benefited from going for players like Sa and Jimenez when they were still hot for a while. Hey Henry, hey Harold. Hope you guys are doing well too. Yeah, so I'm going to quickly just have a look at some Twitter questions. These are some of the older ones, but Harold sent me a question and he's in the chat. So he says, thoughts on the teams. He's got 0.3 in the bank and 1 free transfer. Don't have enough to do Laporte to Rudiger. That's rough. That's rough. So I guess it's going to be a -4, potentially. I would actually say, why not consider dropping Foden and Laporte together? Maybe I would say your plans for 30, because you've also got an option of actually going for Weghorst to Adams as well, which is another opportunity you have there. But I think if you were to do a double transfer, it would probably to get Rudiger in somehow, which necessitates probably dropping Foden. If we go out of Davies, is there an opportunity there for a cheaper defender? I mean, you've got Amartey as well. If you wanted to sort of reduce the cost of your defense and maybe go for a Leicester player who's quite cheap and is semi-nailed now too, but I think that's a bit of a gamble. Yeah, I would say maybe consider dropping Foden potentially for this game, and that would give you Rudiger, hopefully. And maybe even you might decide on dropping something. I'd probably drop Saka over Cancelo, but you might even consider playing two options for a -4. I've personally gone for Laporte to James myself. So I'll show you that in a bit. How do you guys feel? I mean, how many players do you guys want to have by game week 30? Because I'm personally planning only to have 7 to 8 players. You still remember the Salah assist to Jimenez giving me a massive green arrow around game week 6? I remember watching that. You're talking about the Southampton game, right? That was painful to watch. I remember watching that game live, and I saw Jimenez just shrug off the defender, and the defender seemed to fall and crumple like clay, and I was like so confused how that happened because I actually had Livramento, so I was kind of clamoring for a clean sheet there. And also, I didn't own Jimenez, nor did I own Sa. I think Sa during that sort of run had plenty of 2 to 3 bonus games, so that's quite crazy. Wow, you're gonna have 10 players. That's pretty insane. I think 7 to 8 is good enough coverage. It obviously depends on the quality of player as well, so we'll have to look at that. But personally, yeah. Just to show you guys my team as well for tomorrow. Who do you guys actually plan on captaining too? Because I think that's another separate sort of discussion this week that's quite interesting. It seems like a lot of people have divided their opinions. It seems like Rafinha is the dominant favorite, outside of maybe going for a simple safe option like single game week Salah. And then obviously Chelsea defense seems to be quite an interesting option too. Best week to bench boost, I have to say it's completely team dependent. There seems to be a massive double game week 36 that is set to sort of come our way. And I think that is another great opportunity to look at that too. So do take a look into that. Nuclear Atom 7 will do for me. I agree completely. I think there's no need to really look too much into it. When is the best game week to use the free hits? Once again, extremely team dependent. So it depends on how many gaps you have in these blank game weeks, and also whether you might feel that there's an opportunity to capitalize on the double. So for example, I might actually plan around double game week 36 or the blank game week in 33, and play around that too. All the offside Watkins for captain if you don't bottle it. I hope he gets a few more chances than he usually does. I mean, he still is sort of the focal point of the team, but I feel like Aston Villa don't actually create as many chances in open play as people think, so that's kind of what worries me about Watkins. If you're not free hitting in Game Week 30, that just leaves you with just 7 starters. You sure about that? I'm completely happy with 7 starters in Game Week 30. I mean, when you've got 4 to 5 fixtures in that specific game week, ultimately, you only really need to be covered by around 7 to 8 players. You know, you don't need to have a full team of playing 10 or 11. I think this week was a great example. I sort of over-invested into going for a team of 11. Wasn't the greatest team of 11. And then people who actually ended up captaining the right fixture in terms of someone like Son or Kane in the previous week actually did much better than people who over-invested into Burnley players and probably will regret it from that point on. Captain Rafinha for you because Aston Villa are weak and Rafinha's flank, and Jesse Marsh will get Rafinha to those half spaces. I hope so, Nuclear Adams. I hope so. That's the goal. I'll be looking at DMs very quickly now, guys. Thanks for reaching out. So let's have a look at your DMs. So did you guys message me on message requests, or was it just earlier? If you message me with a DM on Twitter, just feel free to ping me so that I know you guys are in the chat. I'll have a look at Goat Status's comment for now. He's got 2 transfers. Was thinking of replacing Laporte for Alonso. Not really a big fan of that, to be honest. I don't think Alonso is nailed enough. And I feel like, for example, if you're a player who's going to James, I think you have the security of knowing that James will be permanent for the rest of the season. So you're not only looking at James as someone who is a punt, whereas Alonso, for me, is a bit more of a punt. 0.1 million in the bank. I need to actually specifically check how much Laporte is as a player, just so I can actually advise. I mean, Thiago Silva might be a little bit better than Alonso. I think Thiago Silva makes the most sense here. What other transfer would you guys make? I mean, I might go out of King, personally. I think going out of King is sensible, but what other opportunities do we have? We could also maybe go... I mean, it's a bit of a side graze move going out of Gordon, so I probably wouldn't recommend it. What else can we actually think about here? I might actually just roll the other transfer, right? And then maybe just invest in the next week in a Spurs player, potentially. That could be an option, too. I think if this player has 2 free transfers, he could also go change a keeper. Maybe get a double game week keeper. Someone like Dubravka would be okay for this week, I suppose. I'm not sure if you want to double up on Wolves. It does cost a lot of money, and then you already have Ramsdale for blank game week 30. So I don't really want to spend too much money on 2 consistent keepers who both play on 30. So there's no reason to do that. Potentially, because I think what this player clearly lacks is some Spurs options for the next week. So that's an opportunity too. I mean, I wouldn't really go out of De Bruyne necessarily into anyone. He's still captaining De Bruyne, which is interesting. Uh, I guess Rafinha might be the odd man out in that situation. What would you do with this team? Thinking about using a free hit and bringing in a Chelsea defender. Um, Interesting. So this team is obviously clearly set up for a blank game week 30, almost too set up in my opinion. But that's not really a big deal because he's got Ramsdale, Tierney, Saiss, Dean, so that's 4, 5 with Son and Saka and Rafinha. So you're stretching that all the way to 7 players, and then Bone with 8, then 9 with Jimenez, and then obviously maybe one transfer more. I mean, that's interesting, I guess. Um, I mean, if you're free hitting this week, then I would say free hitting this week. I mean, it's nice because he returns back to the Liverpool and Arsenal players, so that's quite nice. Um, I mean, if you're free hitting, obviously you've got to show me a separate template. So Muhit says, just wanted to ask you who are the 3 best captain contenders. I mean, I'd say Rudiger, Rafinha, and Coutinho. I mean, I think maybe Salah might be better. Yeah. I'd say Rudiger, Rafinha, and Salah. No particular order. Coutinho. Actually, I'm gonna start a little bit of a poll as well, if you guys could help me out, because that would be quite helpful for me. So the question is going to be bench, Cancelo, Tierney, and Dennis. I just want to kind of see what your opinions are, and don't be influenced by my bench now. I've tried refreshing Twitter, guys. So if you okay, I've got all the messages flowing now. Apologies, I think my Twitter didn't really update for a while. So let's just start from the bottom here with Pablo. So he's got free hit thoughts. Um, I mean, first questions is why is Kane on the free hit? Um, Can't we just spread the money around, maybe upgrade? I would prefer Alonso over James. I would even get Rudiger over Thiago Silva. But maybe you prefer the bonus points to Thiago Silva. Keeper's fine. Cody's fine. Dean is fine. I mean, I think that's a lovely team, to be quite honest. The one thing I'll say is that anyone free hitting this week will probably suffer if Cancelo does well, which hopefully he does. We'll see what happens. But I like the team overall. So Van Dijk to James, me to size, Weghorst to Watkins captain, very differential as you mentioned, and hopefully you don't bottle it. Would you bench boost Ramsdale, Trent, Saka, and Tierney? I think I actually would. I think I'd be quite happy with that bench boost because when I think about it, yeah, I think that's a lovely sort of bench boost. I think on paper that's a good game for Arsenal to get a clean sheet, hopefully, and we've seen a lot of teams get clean sheets for Watford lately. This is my team for this game week. Another lovely team. Rudiger captain, very nice to see. Olise, that's interesting. I guess I don't really know what the bench is, but that's a strong team. Happy with it. He's only got one free hit left, so which week would be the best to use it? I mean, just having a look at your team now in terms of game week 30. So you've got Sa, you've got Dean, Rafinha, Son, Jimenez. I guess quite thin there. Could consider free hit 30, but depends on the bench. Otherwise, say for 33, viewing for... I'd probably use your free hit for 33 or 36. It just depends on your situation, really. Because, for example, people who can wildcard at around 34 will probably position themselves for 36. But if you can't do that, then there's a very good opportunity to maybe gamble your team towards maybe avoiding one of those weeks and then deliberately playing your free hit where you don't have the right players to cover in one of those double game weeks. So that's an option too. Malcolm's got a question, and he's saying thoughts on this wild card. I like this wild card because I've been telling people that I don't really like triple Newcastle, so I'm very happy to see that you've got double Newcastle. That's nice to see. As far as Kulusevski and White at the back of the bench, very lovely to see as well. Trent's going to be scary. I remember him scoring versus West Ham last time, but I completely understand how you've laid out your bench in this way, and I think I'm very happy with this team. I've unloved it, but I'll love it again. So Sir Ebia says, who should he captain? I'd probably say Rafinha. I mean, I think obviously a lot of people have a bias towards Salah, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's clearly the best player in the Premier League. Form-wise, he still showed very, very good form. No reason to really drop your captaincy over Salah if you have confidence that Salah will work out. As far as this team, I'd say lack of Chelsea slightly concerning. I wouldn't say that I think Man United have a great chance of scoring versus City. I just don't think that, man to man, the rosters are really capable of matching up evenly. I would say City probably are the overwhelming favorites, if I was being completely fair. But I would still say that I prefer at least one of the Chelsea options in your team, and maybe a replacement of Laporte is calling me. Texio, hey Fran, thoughts on my team? Thinking to do Cancelo to James or Rudiger. Still can't decide which one. Bench boost this week. We'll probably do Van Dijk to get Cancelo back. Yep, absolutely sensible moves there suggested. Ooh, that's a lovely bench boost opportunity, I would say. Definitely, I would go for a bench boost, yeah. I mean, I think it's a question of safety versus, ceilings and floors. I think James has a clearly lower floor than Rudiger because you don't know whether he'll play the second game. There might be some sort of aggravation of his injury and there's less of that sort of tell with Rudiger. Rudiger is someone who's been nailed over the course of the season, so I think it's a question of what your liking is as an FPL manager. Are you more aggressive or are you slightly more conservative? I would say James is much more aggressive, perhaps even too aggressive, just because we don't, we might see Tuchel rotate. But I think the news of Azpilicueta missing training was quite positive if you are someone who's looking to go for James. And so I would leave it up to you, really. I think neither are bad options, but I think the bench boost is definitely something you should pursue. So Harold is saying, who do I think should he should have instead of Foden? So obviously, there's obviously a lack of coverage of a sort of Aston Villa midfielder here. So, and what I would probably suggest is maybe I would say maybe Ramsey is nice. And the reason why I say this is because that does save you a lot of money to actually go for strikers later on. Maybe around game week 30 and beyond, because we have these games where Leicester will probably have fantastic double game weeks in the future. And if you set your team up in a way where you have a little bit more budget for the forward positions, that could allow you to cover maybe Kane or Vardy in the near future. And that's a possibility too. But if you want to keep it within the midfield options, then I would say and then if you want to stick your template towards having these five midfielders who are consistently outputting, then maybe I think Coutinho or Havertz are good punts for this week. Should quickly go back to A-Gang here. My current draft, what would I change? Ramsey to Martinelli next week. Nice choice there. Your current draft, what would I change? Honestly, I don't have any issues really with this draft. I think it covers all the teams really well. It's flexible, it's dynamic. You probably just need a solution to go to Cancelo, but I imagine it'll be quite simple um, in the future. That's the only question I have. Like, how do you go to Cancelo? Do you once again have to drop Martinelli back, or how does that work with your budget? So you're bench boosting Mio, are you? I'd probably actually look at -4 to get James plus Rudiger for Robertson plus Tierney and a bench boost. Interesting. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Weghorst in the bench boost. First things first. I mean, I don't like this bench boost idea because you're removing two players who have fantastic games in 29, and you're leaving Bowen and Weghorst on your bench. I would completely disagree there, unfortunately. I just think that Bowen and Weghorst don't deliver anything the next week. You're taking two players who have doubles in the subsequent week, and I think that's not the right play, especially since for Tierney at least, you also have once again a little bit more long term value or mid term value with Tierney playing on 32. So I wouldn't be a fan of that. I'd rather, if you were bench boosting, I'd honestly rather maybe you focus on maybe going for a gamble away from Bowen, and then maybe moving away from Weghorst potentially if you really wanted to bench boost. But I don't think this is the bench boost week for yourself. I'm just gonna quickly go back on YouTube. Almost a perfect split between Cancelo, Dennis, and Tierney, and that's sort of coloring my decision making as well. I'll just end the poll there. Personally, I think I'm going to bench Tierney, but we'll see what happens. Yes, you please feel free to mail your teams towards me, guys. I'll be checking on that. In terms of responding to some of the YouTube questions, Parv says, do you hold Jota or sell? I think you hold for the subsequent week, but it depends on whether you want to go for a gamble in between. As far as FPL Penguin, Reece James or Silva and Captain James, I like Reece James. I think Reece James is enough of a differential, and I'm not confident that he plays in the second game, so I would probably say not to Captain James, but I like James more than Silva. Bobby, I can definitely check your DMs in a quick second. Leaving Kane on the bench for Ramsey seems so wrong. How's Ramsey doing recently in the stats? So I have been looking at Ramsey's stats, and I think that they're just about level with Coutinho. So for me, I would still prioritize Kane. I think the Spurs defense have actually been one of the top teams overall in terms of creative attacking stats. So I really would favor Kane even a single. He just seems fantastic right now. James from the New Planet FPL pod predicts Everton versus Burnley to be put into either Gameweek 31/32. Have any Everton assets piqued your interest, or are they too poor to consider even with doubles? I think the only interest or only asset that I'd be interested in is actually going for Gordon. Tech CEO. That's my kind of opinion on that. You'll captain Reece James. Good for you. That's a great differential. I did respond to Mio, so do have a look at my response, or have a listen at least. Do you hold Kyle Walker-Peters as you want him long term, or move to Livermento? I think you hold Kyle Walker-Peters for sure. Let's go back to Henry. Please ignore last messages. You keep changing your mind, as do we all. As do we all. 1 million in the bank. What should you do? I love the midfield for now. I mean, Madison, I guess he might be a hold for now. I'd rather move out of Bowen, even though Bowen does play in the game week 30. I think you should go Chelsea defender, my friend. Oh, actually, that's an interesting one. Because I guess you're keeping Cucurella for the subsequent game week. You can keep Cancelo maybe for the next 2 game weeks. And you've already got a very strong Liverpool-based team. So why not just maybe move away from Weghorst and then just drop Madison? I would say a Southampton forward is nice, or you can go for Wood, who I'm not super fond of. Alternatively, I guess you could go for a keeper transfer, but I don't think that seems quite lame and unnecessary. The lack of Chelsea is a bit concerning. I would say if you're willing to part ways with either Cancelo or Robertson, that would make sense. Up to you though. I don't think, but I mean, I understand your point about not playing in 30, but I just don't think that's a big deal. You've already got Madison who plays in 30. You've got Bowen who plays in 30. What is the need to have 9 to 10 players who play in 30? Like if we go by all the key teams who play in 30, right? Like your coverage of Arsenal is pretty poor, admittedly. I would say you're clearly lacking Tottenham players. I'm not exactly sure what your budget is, so I would say you probably want to be getting Kulusevski in somehow, but you can't. Maybe you replace Ward-Prowse with Kulusevski in game week 30. And then for the rest of the team, I think Rafinha covers Leeds, Madison covers Leicester, hopefully. Jimenez covers Wolves, and you've already got another Wolves player. Then you've got Ramsdale too, so that kind of covers Arsenal defense. You might be missing an Arsenal midfielder, but who really cares if you've got Kulusevski? I just think that in that specific Arsenal double game week, Arsenal don't have the best of games anyway. So do we really care too much? Sorry, I mean their double's not that great, so you don't need Saka as a priority. I prefer Kulusevski's double, and then he fits into 30 perfectly. So that's sort of my opinion. And then maybe you can replace Cucurella right after 29 as well if you really want to attack 30. But yeah, I mean that's my opinion. I'm happy to go into blank game week 30 with 7 players. And as long as I get the captaincy right, then I'm happy. And I probably don't take as many hits as other people do, which will probably be a mistake. And when I look at your team now, especially with Madison, I'm not exactly sure what his injury situation is. At least you can replace him with someone who has a double. It's going to be a free transfer, so you don't lose anything for it, and it could be very explosive. Let's just keep moving on, though. So that guy, wildcard draft, not showing up. James Sice, Dean Havertz, love the wildcard draft, actually, yeah. Very sensible. And if I recall, you're a big fan of Saka, so I do hope he turns up in 29 and 30 for yourself. King Andrew, bro, you've taken a -8 to bring in Rudiger, Willock, and Che Adams. How do you rate my squad? And do you have any advice for you in terms of subs? I think the subs are, I would say it's correct. So I think it's correct. Obviously, if St. Maximin's fit, I just don't want St. Maximin to come in for the second game and maybe play a few minutes. That's the only thing I'd be worried about, King Andrew. Otherwise, I'd probably just go for. I might actually move King towards the. Oof, that's a tough bench as well. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can't even fault it because I think the starting players are nice. I think just because you've got Saka, I wouldn't necessarily want Smith Rowe. Maybe it's a tough one. I'd still keep Cancelo probably over King. So I'd keep it like so. Woodcard says, think of going Kane to Jimenez for this game week and then go Adams to Kane next game week and play bench boost. Doing this will give me, yeah, I like that play. Very sensible. Big boy Dama, hi Fran, I wildcard last week to BB this week, but K, oh, sorry, I didn't know Walker Peters had gotten injured. Apologies for not following the news. Is the bench boost still on? You do want Kyle Walker Peters' Livermore to long term. I would still transfer out though, because if Kyle Walker Peters misses the next 2 games, then it kind of. I mean, that -4 that you'll take, you don't think Livramento is nailed after 28. Interesting. But I mean, worse. I mean, like, do you still want to have Southampton players maybe if they don't have doubles anywhere near, if that makes sense? Are they that much of a priority? What would the alternative be in that sort of price range? Can you afford something like an Aston Villa defender? Yeah, I see what you mean. Hey Fran, what changes should I make? Thinking Chelsea defender and potential -4. Yeah, I mean, I think this is very sensible. I think you just go for the move towards a Chelsea defender. Um, I think Rafinha might be your -4 if you really want to go out of Foden. Who would I captain? Interesting. From this team, probably Mount Rudy. Thoughts on this wildcard draft? Looking to free hit in game week 30 and also considering bench boosting next week. So let's have to think about it. So obviously you are going on this wildcard draft and then you're bench boosting the subsequent week. The subsequent week you'll be having I guess you're just bench boosting the Southampton players really. Um, Everyone else has great doubles in a sense, and you've got Saka and Kulusevski who are perfect. The bench boost might not be perfect next week, but I can still see it being a good option. I would just say players like what is Wolves' specific matchup in the next week? I just need to double check. Still a lovely game versus Everton. Yeah, I mean definitely an option. I like the draft too. I guess you're free hitting on 30. Chirag, Jimenez for Antonio from -4, good move. I would say so, yeah. Should you move away from Foden 2 for -8? If yes, with whom? Chelsea mid, IMO in your structure. I think Havertz is the most logical one, just because I don't know whether ZX minutes need to be managed. So if, for example, ZX is fit for one game and then doesn't play the other, then I'm not really super high on him. But he's a huge differential. Not too fond of Mount right now because I think he hasn't been performing too well lately, but I could be wrong. Think about the following transfer for -8. Cancelo to Rudiger, Tierney to Cody and Bowen to Rafinha. Awesome rank, by the way, currently 2.9. I remember obviously you've been doing extremely well all season long, so congrats on the great run. Cancelo to Rudiger, Tierney to Cody and Bowen to Rafinha. I think all very, very sensible transfers, and a very happy -8 that I would take. As far as maybe going for Cody, I'm not too sure about that. I don't know if you really want to triple up on Wolves. I think that might be unnecessary. I think getting one Wolves defender and one Chelsea defender is good enough in terms of this week in coverage. And especially since Tierney will have a double himself in the subsequent week, I think you might need to take that into account. Hey, Fran, what do you think I should bench and who should you captain? I think your bench makes sense based on the players who have doubles. Maybe, I mean, I know he's a tough one because I don't know if he actually plays, but I think that's logical. I'm sort of worried about Ait-Nouri's minutes. I think there's been a little bit of rotation with Marcel lately, so that's kind of what I've been worried with. So I'm just gonna quickly go back to YouTube chat. Thank you so much, Utkarsh. I had missed that a while back, and also super duper apologies for missing that. I've just been responding to some chats. Captain Mendy, Alonso, Coutinho, Rafinha, Salah. I would actually captain Rafinha, my friend. Super duper. I just think that Rafinha has very, very good fixtures in terms of how poor the defense is from his opposing teams. And then you've got the double game week, which is a little bit of a better option than Salah. I think with Mendy too, unfortunately, has a little bit of a lower ceiling compared to other Chelsea defenders. The reason being he doesn't actually get to make too many saves when Chelsea's defense is on form, because they usually shut out their opponents. I like the option of Coutinho, but I think, when I kind of compare with Rafinha, I do like Rafinha a little bit more as an option. So I would say Rafinha. I might actually say Salah's the second best captain there, so I would probably vice captain Salah. Utkarsh, once again, thank you so much for your support. You've been around and supporting the channel for a while now, so thank you very much, and I really appreciate that. Don't see Chelsea scoring many against Norwich and Burnley. I think, unfortunately, this Chelsea side, what we've seen so far this season is that they create a lot of chances. The underlying stats show that their expected goals, expected assists are actually very high, but in reality, we've seen them not produce the amounts that we actually expect based on underlying data. And that kind of points towards saying that defenders are much better for Chelsea because they still get the clean sheets. That's been something that they've proven in terms of their ability to actually achieve. And then when you actually get defenders, you're getting players who are racking up potential assists, crosses and things like that, which rack up your bonus points, which makes Chelsea defenders very interesting. The thing that I don't like about Alonso is he might not play the 2 games, and I don't really see him as someone that you'd like to really end your season with. I think there's much more permanence within Rudiger and James. As far as captaining Coutinho to get 14 points over 2 games, Captain Salah Salah could obviously get 18 points in one game week, but at the same time, we've also seen Salah blank. It's not like Salah is a permanent option. I agree that Coutinho could have one. We've seen him flop several games. I think Rafinha is actually someone who's actually very solid on a game-to-game basis. So I actually like Rafinha just because, first of all, you got that kind of new manager boost. I think he's also against some pretty poor defenses. He could still be on penalties. And then overall, the big plus, as I said, with having 2 games, where he's been a bit more consistent than players like Coutinho and Ramsey, who don't feature every week in terms of hauling. Whom would you suggest between Ramsey and Willock slash Fraser? I would go for Fraser. But I think Ramsey also allows you to actually get much better budget flexibility. So that's the thing that I like about Ramsey. Ramsey kind of is an option. Ramsey is really nice because he plays in game week 30. And not only that, but he, as I said, he gives you more funds to spread towards your forwards. You don't captain very often, but when you do, you captain Salah. Nothing wrong with that, and very, very sensible. Who will you start, Jota or Diaz? I would probably start Jota. Check normal tweets, please. I will check normal tweets in a second. Wildcard is Mendy, Rudiger, Saiz, Cody, Trent, Robbo, Ramsey, Son, Rafinha, James Ward-Prowse, Kulusevski, Jimenez, Broja, Vardy. Very interesting. So you gone Vardy very early. Fair enough. I guess the bench would probably be Kulusevski this week, unfortunately, because you've already got Son. And then I would probably bench... Well, that's a tough one. I mean, do you bench Vardy after bringing him in? Potentially you do. Just because there's no other reason you would have brought Jimenez and Broja in unless you wanted to capitalize on their doubles. The last option, I might bench one of the Liverpool players, to be honest. Yeah. Hi, Fran. What about Van Dijk to Rudiger? I think that's a very sensible move, Van Dijk to Rudiger. Hey, Fran, do you think Bowen to Rafinha for a -4 is worth it? Bowen still has some nice fixtures over the next few weeks. I think Bowen to Rafinha is worth it. Bowen does have okay fixtures. I wouldn't say he has nice fixtures over the next few weeks. The thing about Rafinha is that he also has the same sort of fixture in Game Week 30, so that's a big plus for both. And you might capitalize on two much better fixtures than Bowen has in this sort of singular game versus Liverpool. How about Ings getting in the team? I don't think Ings has been very good this season, just watching him play. So I don't really see him. I mean, he could maybe start a game, but I just don't think it would be a detractor on Watkins, which is why I'm not interested in Watkins, but I think I have no interest in Ings, if that's your question. Should you start Foster over Sanchez? Probably yes. How about Ings getting the... Sorry, I've already responded to that. Thoughts on Mount? I think form-wise, he's been quite poor lately, so not a big, huge fan of Mount. Which chips do I have remaining? Only a free hit right now, so I plan on playing them in probably one of those big double game weeks in 34/36. CM Punk. What about yourself? So I'm going to quickly... I think David had messaged us. So let's try and find David's tweets. Is bench boost a good option? I mean, is the bench boost a good option? I think... bench Robertson or Cancelo? I'd bench Robbo. Mark, hi Fran, great show. Thoughts on my wild card? Game week 28, 8 doubles, game week 29, 8 doubles, fantastic, with possible game week 32 transfer to bring in Vardy. Yep, I've got similar opinions to you in terms of transferring Vardy for 30, because I think he's the big differential there. As far as the wild card, I absolutely do love it. So you've gone for Ramsdale, which is very sensible, and then the triple Arsenal. Okay, yeah. I like the flexibility too. I mean, I'm personally a bit more of a Kulusevski fan, but you've already gone for Son, so I can completely understand the way you've got sort of played around going for Arsenal players. So totally fine and happy with the wild card. Bobby, good evening, Fran. Use wild card. Who do you put or remove? I think so. As some people have suggested, you could actually go in 2 weeks to actually go for Kane to Vardy potentially in game week 30. That's an option too, because that should allow you the flexibility to have Son in the midfield and then Vardy on attack. That's a potential option. I'm not a big fan of having Tsimikas. I would rather Amarte, because Amarte could actually play in game week 30, so that could be a really nice option for you from the defensive portion. And then I think keepers wise, you're totally fine with San Dubravka. Maybe you could even consider, since you already have Sa as your keeper, you could obviously go for an Aston Villa defender too. That's completely up to your personal choice. I'm not too fond of Jimenez, but if you like Jimenez, that's fine. I would also raise that Kulusevski is a nice option too, which is sort of why I'm talking about maybe if you consider the opportunity to go into Vardy in game week 30 means that you might not necessarily need Maddison on your wild card. You could, for example, go for Kulusevski on your wild card, have Kulusevski for the double game week next week, and then you can bring in Vardy in game week 30. So I think that's an option. Doug Stamper. So you took 2 hits for Rudiger and Coutinho. Are you going to bench boost? Interesting. So I would, well, honestly, I'd probably, I mean, De Gea is the one question mark I have. I wouldn't mind the bench boost. I mean, you could even consider taking another hit for a keeper, potentially. Up to you, though. Up to you. I think since you don't seem like you're going too deep in Chelsea for now, I mean, there could also be an option where you go for a keeper that plays in Game Week 30. So Sa would be a good option, just because if you think about what Sa can reward you with is De Gea and Sanchez won't be playing in Game Week 30. So if you have a Sa, you'll get some return. Like if you take a hit now for Sa, you get the two games of Sa, and then you also potentially get another game from Sa where you get a little bit of return on your hit. So that could be an option. Let's have a look at Heyo. Only another question: would it be worth having Cancelo instead of Robertson? Would also, yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Cancelo, so you'll never see me slander Cancelo. I think he's always an option. Hey, Fran, did you drop Laporte? Frank, who would you suggest between Ramsey and Willock/Fraser? So I think I did answer the question in YouTube. Any suggestions for a -4 and bench option? I was thinking Saka in for Game Week 29 and Richarlison with 3 transfer Game Week 29. Broughton will think of a -4. I think this week you're set. If you really want to play for the subsequent week, then you can look at that next week. No reason to really look at it now. Let's just look at some other ones. So Shabam has said he's loving the stream. Decided to bounce back the wild card. Awesome. Really want to move out of the double Southampton attack. Any thoughts on a third forward? ASM. I mean, Hwang's another option who plays in Game Week 30, but do you really want Hwang? Probably not. I really do like Southampton double forward this week. That's just my opinion. I guess the one thing with a wild card is obviously people will question how do you plan on going to Coutinho? I guess that might mean you have to reduce Adams in the future. So that might be the question that I would throw back at you when you're kind of considering how you plan on setting up your team. Obviously, I understand that funds can come from Havertz and players like that. So it's really up to you how you plan on playing around that. I do like the wild card though. I think it's very aggressive, I will say. But with enough coverage in 30 to be quite good. And as far as the forwards, I would say the truth is really there aren't many good forwards in FPL. And there's a reason why you don't need to really stress too much about it, in my opinion. So I think you've got a lovely team going on. So nothing really wrong with the wild card that you have in place. Thank you. Are you from Korea, Andrew? Nice to see a fan from Korea. CM Punk. So doing Cancelo to Kilman for a -4 this week, or do you brought in Rafinha? We'll have enough cash to do Foden plus Dennis to Kulusevski plus Kane next week. Yeah, I mean, those are absolutely fire transfers. Really, really do like that. Cancelo to Kilman, not the biggest fan of that, but I guess that was more budget related, right? So I can somewhat understand it. And since you don't have a, Sa as your keeper, I can understand that too. Best middle replacement, Cody Kilman or even Hover. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Hover is, I guess, is you don't know how nailed he is, and then you probably have to, and then you don't really need him too long, right? Sorry guys, my keyboard I imagine must be super loud, but am I playing my wild card? Not personally, no. So if you look at my team selection video, I've actually just shown I'm just going for a single free transfer instead. CM Punk is planning on a 3 hit to 33, probably hopefully saving wildcard to 34. Totally fair, very very sensible moves. Size Rudiger, Alexander, how are this? I mean that's a good defense, obviously. Those are lovely players to always have and have been great this season. Who would I have captained? I have Rafinha captain for now. So if I show you guys my team, I've got Rafinha captained and Reece James as a vice captain. Maybe I'll vice Salah, to be fair. But I mean, I don't think my vice captain really matters. I imagine, obviously, Rafinha will hopefully play both games. So we'll see what happens there. I have a strange feeling that Mason Mount will outscore both Raf and Coutinho. I mean, definitely back it up then. Still having nightmares from the Weghorst train last week. Well, I think the difference is that Rafinha has proven himself for the last 2 seasons, that he's a very consistent option and very capable of scoring versus most Premier League defenses, whereas we had a small sample size with Weghorst, and I think Weghorst wasn't really a player who... I mean, I think Weghorst is someone who you have a fear of because he needs to service as that sort of tall, lanky centre forward. Because Burnley don't get much of the ball or retain much of the ball. So that's the big difference. Whereas Rafinha can still create some chances from deep himself to get involved. He could also be on penalties. And then overall, I think this Leeds team has shown themselves of being capable of creating quality chances, or at least creating a very chaotic game, which is very contrasting to Burnley's style of play. But I mean, Mount's not going to be a bad option. I think there are clear levels between the Chelsea team and the Burnley team. And even though we do say that Chelsea isn't very good at creating chances, I'm sure they will versus weaker teams. Super duper. What's my plans for Gameweek 28? So yeah, my plans are already made. I've actually brought James into my team and I've transferred Laporte out. Unfortunately, I won't be around in the morning, which is why I've done an earlier transfer. I waited explicitly for the news and the press conference between Tuchel, where he said that James has been training really well and that nothing was really aggravated from his injury and his recovery from his injury. And with Azpilicueta also not being in training, I thought that was a great opportunity to take a little bit of a gamble and go for James as my single transfer this game week. So no hits for me, but those are my plans. As far as going back to Twitter, I'm just going to quickly respond to some people I haven't back in a while. Who would you sell and buy this game week? I mean, I would probably take out... I mean, I wouldn't take out... I think it's a good opportunity to maybe go out of Bowen. Bowen to an Aston Villa mid is not bad. At the same time, I probably wouldn't touch Weghorst for now. He's probably a transfer in the future. I think maybe you just bring in a Chelsea defender potentially. I think it's a good opportunity to drop Robertson potentially. If I was looking at your team. As far as Hamad, he's planning on transferring VVD to Rudiger and Bowen to Mount for a -4. Do you think you should bench boost Ramsey, Tierney, Saka, Kane, Trent? I think that I would be happy to bench boost that. Yes, it's all singles, but I think it could be quite explosive. Virgil van Dijk to Rudiger and Bowen to Mount. Yeah, I think I'd be quite happy with that, honestly. Cheers. Move Havertz to Willock playing safe. Fair. I mean, I still think Willock's a bit of a differential. I know he's got doubles, but obviously the floor is 8 points in 2 weeks, which isn't terrible, I guess. That could be better than Havertz for sure. So yeah. I would say, I mean, if you wanted to play it safe, you could still go double Chelsea and maybe just get another Chelsea defender. If that's how you want to play safe. Does that sort of make sense to you? Planning to get him back in for Rudiger in 33, though, so I'm not thinking about it for now. Yep, I feel you. Got some spare money in the bank, understand. Stuck with Tierney. Yeah, I feel the same with you. I mean, it's a weird one where you think it's a good enough fixture for to play Tierney, but I can understand keeping with him, and I think he should be valuable for the next week. So yeah, I think that's what you do, and you probably understand that you're a little bit more capped this week, but you know you're taking one that's hit, and next week should hopefully be better. Let's go to message requests. So quite punty, not sure to swap out Ziyech for Willock / Fraser, then ASM for Jimenez and James for Rudiger. Definitely. I mean, I guess I guess you could play St. Maximum and kind of envision him as someone who doubles in the subsequent week. And if Ziyech is your 1 week punt, then I'd be happy. Who's your Spurs? Okay, you got Kulusevski ready, so that's really nice. Because I'm just trying to think, who would you replace Ziyech with in the next week? And I think that's just, I mean, I think Ziyech is just a simple move to a Liverpool player, right? I actually think this is punty, but I actually really love it. I love it. Big fan of it, honestly. Because next week you'll be more covered for the doubles, regardless for St. Maximin. He should hopefully be fit for those. Because I'm personally probably going to go for 2 hits. I mean, 1 hit next week. I'll probably just go into Kulusevski from Bowen. And maybe, yeah, I think I might just do Kulusevski from Bowen. And then I might go into a Liverpool player from Cancelo. That could be an option for me. Obviously, a little scary with Crystal Palace. I'm going to have to hope that Crystal Palace continue to be Man City's bogey team. But that's it, yeah. Who to remove and who to add, Bobby. Have I responded to you already, Bobby? So I think I did, yeah. I remember looking at this team. So how is everyone kind of feeling about tomorrow? Are you guys, do you guys think you're set up for Gameweek 28, or are you guys trying to plan to save your chips for better sort of plays later in the season? Need to play triple captain Salah in Gameweek 29. Understand, Carl. So undecided on whether to bench boost this week. I think you've got plenty of good bench boost weeks ahead. As far as bench boosting Ramsdale, Van Dijk, Adams, and Saka, I think that's a lovely bench boost. Nothing really wrong with that. But I think I did respond to that, sorry. So yeah. I think that's it for me for this game week in terms of the strategy stream. I think I've answered as many tweets as possible. So I'll probably respond to some of the older tweets off the live stream. Let's just respond to this last question here. Is a minus... Oh, sorry. So David De Gea to Saar, Cancelo to James, Lamptey to Rudiger, and Bowen to Rafinha. Is it worth the minus 12? I think moving out of De Gea is worth it, yes. Cancelo to James, not so much. But you don't have money in the bank, so you kind of need to do that. I guess when I'm looking at your team, I would say Cornet and Elise. I'm a little bit worried that you still have players like that in your team. And Weghorst, well, that's going to be tricky. But hopefully you can adjust that soon. Still think it's worth it. I just need... I mean, Bowen to Rafinha. Bowen's a weird one. Think you've got a lack of budget, and I think the money might be spread too thin. So the way I see this team is it's a very strong 14, but it's or a strong 15, but it's not necessarily something that will pose a very strong 11 week to week. So I think what Ramsey does is he gives you that sort of flexibility, and if you're going for James Rudiger, I think you can captain one of those players and probably be happy to not go for Rafinha. Maybe going for like I would just try and replace maybe one of Elise and Cornet, save a little bit more money in your team so you can bring in some better midfielders next week. So for example, if you let's say save some money on Cornet this week, you could actually move that money and replace Elise in the next week and maybe go for someone like Kulusevski. The reason why I say that is because Bowen has a blank, I mean, he plays in blank in week 30, and you could cover yourself a little bit better because right now you've got Dean playing in blank in week 30, Rafinha playing blank in week 30, Son, and Watkins. So that's just 5 players really, including your keeper, which is a little bit on the low edge. So I would always try to address some problem points in the team first, then try because I don't think Rafinha is an absolute must buy this week. So that's just how I feel. That's awesome. Yeah, I think taking the risk on St. Maximin is great. I mean, ultimately, as I said, you know, if St. Maximin comes back, at least you've got him for the next week where he gets a double. So that will be the huge kind of plus point for you. Sometimes you go so quiet. I think the stream stopped. Gosh, Harry, have I messed up there? I've made a little bit of a sin today, guys. I think my microphone wasn't very close to my mouth, so sorry about that. Omar, I mean there might not be a deadline stream tomorrow. I may or may not be going to watch the latest Batman movie early in the day so I can get some seats. Oh right, sorry Henry, yeah, my bad. I mean I stopped talking to try and actually think about what advice I'm going to give as opposed to just saying something on the fly. All good though. James 98, Sufal and Edouard to James and Breuer for -4. I think that's a lovely -4, James. As far as Kingston, Cancelo, Dean, Rudy, Trent back four, lovely back four. Is eight to nine players is more than enough, James. I really think seven is good enough. And Son is a great captain as well. But yeah, I mean, that's it from me now, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead. I hope Gameweek 28 pans out really good for you, and that you guys have lovely weekend plans. I'll probably be live streaming closer to the deadline in the next week. This was a bit of a weird time to do the strategy stream, but I just wanted to cover something. So if anyone who follows the channel can watch it in the morning, wherever they are in the world, and then maybe catch up with my kind of opinions, because I don't think too much is going to change in terms of our understanding of maybe any last minute rumors and things. So yeah, take care, guys, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead.